Amy Wright knew something was wrong the moment she entered her empty house. Call it intuition. Or perhaps the slight displacement of objects, her husband's designer watch positioned differently on the entryway table, the faint smell of an unfamiliar perfume lingering in the air. The beautiful craftsman-style home they had lovingly renovated together now felt like it held secrets in its walls. She set her leather briefcase down and kicked off her heels, massaging her aching feet after a long day of client presentations. "Kevin," she called out, though she knew he wouldn't answer. Her husband had texted earlier that he'd be working late at his architecture firm, something that had become increasingly common over the past 3 months. The house echoed back only silence. Amy moved toward the kitchen, her stocking feet padding softly across the hardwood floors. At 39, she had built a successful career as a marketing executive at Anderson and Burke, carefully balancing her professional ambitions with her marriage to Kevin Wright, the rising star architect whose sleek, sustainable designs had graced the covers of architectural magazines. Their life together was enviable, at least on paper. The reality of the past few months had been quite different. As she poured herself a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon, Amy's phone chimed with a notification. It was an email from Olivia Ramirez, her college roommate and still one of her closest friends, despite the busyness of adult life. Olivia had recently opened a boutique coastal inn called Seaview along the California coast, about a 2-hour drive north of the city. The inn was the realization of Olivia's lifelong dream, and Amy had been thrilled when her friend had invited her to become a silent partner in the venture. Sigh. Kevin knew about their friendship, but had no idea Amy had invested in the property, as she had used some of her inheritance from her grandmother to do so. "How's my favorite marketing genius?" Olivia's message read. "Need your brilliant eyes on these promotional materials when you have a moment. Also miss your face. Coffee next week." Amy smiled and was about to respond when she noticed another notification, a text message from their shared credit card company alerting her to a recent charge. She tapped on it absently, expecting to see one of Kevin's usual business lunches or material purchases for his architectural models. What she saw instead made her breath catch in her throat. A reservation confirmation from Seaview Inn for this coming Saturday, a deluxe oceanfront suite with a private hot tub. Amy's hand began to tremble, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. Kevin had told her he would be attending an architectural conference in San Diego this weekend. She hadn't questioned it. Why would she? Despite the growing distance between them, despite the late nights and the changed passwords on his phone, some part of her had refused to entertain the thought that her husband of 8 years might be betraying her. "No," she whispered, setting the glass down before she could drop it. There must be an explanation. But even as she thought it, more pieces began falling into place, the lingering scents in their bathroom that weren't hers, the sudden interest in his appearance, new clothes, a different haircut, increased time at the gym, the way he turned his phone screen away when she entered a room, the mysterious phone calls he took on the back patio, voice lowered to a murmur. Amy sank onto one of the kitchen bar stools, her mind racing. She opened her laptop and logged into their shared credit card account, scrolling back through months of statements. There it was, a pattern she had somehow missed or willfully ignored: expensive dinners on nights he claimed to be working late, a jewelry purchase from a high-end boutique that she had never received, several charges from hotels within the city. Her hands were steady now as she picked up her phone and called Olivia. Her friend answered on the second ring, her voice warm and bright. "Amy, I was just thinking about you. Did you get my email?" "I did," Amy replied, working to keep her voice even. "Olivia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." There was a brief pause before Olivia responded, her tone more serious. "Of course. What's going on?" Do you have a reservation this weekend for Kevin Wright at Seaview? Another pause, longer this time. Olivia, please, Amy pressed. Olivia's sigh carried through the phone. Yes, a reservation for two, checking in Saturday morning, checking out Sunday afternoon, the deluxe oceanfront suite. She hesitated. Amy, I'm so sorry, but he's made reservations before, 3 times in the past 2 months, always with the same woman. What woman? Amy's voice was barely audible now. I don't know her name. Young, blonde, very attractive. They seem familiar with each other. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, but I wasn't completely sure. Amy closed her eyes, the pain sharp and immediate. Thank you for telling me now. What are you going to do? Olivia asked gently. Amy was silent for a long moment, the wheels in her mind already turning. I'm not sure yet, but whatever it is, I won't be the only one hurting when this is over. After ending the call with Olivia, Amy sat in her darkening kitchen, the untouched wine beside her, contemplating her next move. The initial shock was gradually being replaced by a cold, analytical clarity that had served her well throughout her career. She would not break down. She would not become a victim, and she would certainly not allow Kevin to continue making a fool of her. She picked up her phone again and dialed another number. When a warm, maternal voice answered, Amy felt a rush of emotion that threatened her composure. Eleanor, it's Amy. I know it's late, but I need to see you. And Sarah and Rachel, too, if possible. It's important. Eleanor Wright, her mother-in-law of 8 years, didn't hesitate. Of course, dear. Is everything all right? You sound upset. No, Amy admitted, her voice finally breaking. Everything is not all right, but I don't want to discuss it over the phone. Come over now, Eleanor said firmly. I'll call the girls. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. The drive to Eleanor's Victorian home in the historic district took 20 minutes. By the time Amy arrived, both of Kevin's sisters had already gotten there, à Citeaux. Sarah Wright Chin, the oldest at 43, was a corporate attorney whose no-nonsense approach to life had always resonated with Amy. Rachel Wright, the youngest Wright sibling at 36, was a pediatrician with a warm heart and quick wit. The three women were seated in Eleanor's cozy living room, concern evident on their faces as Amy entered. What's happened? Sarah asked immediately, rising to her feet. Is Kevin okay? Amy laughed bitterly. Kevin is fine, better than fine. Apparently, he's having an affair. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in shock. Rachel shook her head in disbelief, while Sarah's expression hardened into something dangerous. Sit down, dear, Eleanor said finally, patting the spot beside her on the sofa. Tell us everything. And so Amy did. She told them about the gradual changes in Kevin's behavior, the late nights, the emotional distance. She explained about the credit card notifications and the reservation at Seaview. As she spoke, tears finally began to fall, tears of anger as much as heartbreak. I feel so stupid, she whispered. I trusted him completely. You're not stupid, Sarah said firmly. He's the fool throwing away a marriage to someone like you. Eleanor reached over and took Amy's hand in hers. My son, I raised him better than this. I'm so disappointed and ashamed. Her voice was steady, but Amy could see the pain in her eyes. What are you going to do? Rachel asked softly. Before Amy could answer, her phone rang. It's Olivia. I should take this, she said, stepping into the hallway. Olivia, hi. Amy, her friend said without preamble. I've been thinking, you know he's booked for this weekend, right? Well, what if instead of catching him in the act or confronting him directly, we do something more creative? I'm listening, Amy replied, a spark of interest cutting through her misery. What if your mother-in-law and sisters-in-law posed as staff at the inn when Kevin and his companion arrive? I could arrange everything. He'd never expect to see his family there, serving him drinks or cleaning his room. The look on his face alone would be worth it. Despite everything, Amy felt a small smile forming. That's either completely insane or absolutely brilliant. It's both, Olivia said, and Amy could hear the grin in her voice. And the best part, his girlfriend would think he's losing his mind if he starts claiming the hotel staff are his relatives. Come back to my office tomorrow and we'll plan every detail. When Amy returned to the living room and shared Olivia's suggestion, she expected resistance, or at least hesitation. Instead, Eleanor Wright's eyes lit up with a fire Amy had never seen before. I raised that boy to respect women, to honor his commitments, she said firmly. If he's forgotten those lessons, perhaps it's time for a refresher course. She sat up straighter. I make an excellent housekeeper. You know, I did it for years to put Kevin through college. Sarah and Rachel exchanged looks. Then both nodded. I can handle the front desk, Sarah offered. I worked at a hotel through law school. And I'll take pool and drink service, Rachel added. This is going to be the most educational weekend of my little brother's life. For the first time since seeing the credit card notification, Amy felt a sense of power returning. She wasn't just a victim in this story. With the support of these women, her family by marriage, but closer than blood in this moment, she would write the ending herself. There's one more thing you should know, Amy said, her voice stronger now. Seaview Inn. I'm actually a part owner. Kevin doesn't know. I invested some of my inheritance when Olivia opened it. Eleanor's eyebrows rose, and then she began to laugh a rich, full-bodied sound that soon had all four women joining in, the release of tension almost euphoric. Oh, my dear, Eleanor said, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. This is going to be a weekend Kevin Wright will never forget. As Amy drove home later that night, a plan solidifying in her mind, she felt an odd sense of calm settling over her. The marriage she had believed in might be ending, but she was not ending with it. In fact, in some strange way, she felt like she was just beginning. She arrived home to find the house still empty, Kevin's side of the bed untouched. Amy changed into her pajamas and slipped between the sheets, her mind surprisingly clear. Tomorrow she would begin preparations for Saturday. She would call her office and schedule a business trip for the weekend. She would pack a separate bag to take to Olivia's. She would set the stage for Kevin's reckoning. As she drifted towards sleep, Amy found herself thinking not of what she was losing, but of what she was reclaiming: her dignity, her agency, her future. The pain was still there, a dull ache beneath her breastbone, but alongside it was something else, a fierce determination to emerge from this betrayal not broken, but reborn. The following morning, Amy woke with a sense of purpose that had been absent for months. She showered and dressed with particular care, selecting a crimson power suit that she reserved for her most important client meetings. Today, she wasn't facing clients. She was reclaiming her life. Over breakfast, she received a text from Kevin, working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Amy stared at the message, noting the period at the end so final, so dismissive. She wondered if he had any idea how transparent his lies had become, or if he truly believed she was too trusting or too distracted to notice. Either possibility stung, but she pushed the hurt aside. Today wasn't about pain. It was about planning. At precisely 9:00 a.m., she walked into her office at Anderson and Burke Marketing, greeted her assistant with more enthusiasm than usual, and closed her door. Her first call was to Human Resources. Janet, I need to schedule an emergency personal leave for this weekend, she explained to the HR director, a woman she'd known for over a decade. family situation. Of course, Amy, Janet replied, her voice concerned. Is everything all right? Amy hesitated only briefly. It will be, she said finally, but I may need additional time next week. I'll keep you updated. After handling the necessary paperwork, Amy called Olivia. I'm coming to see you at noon, she told her friend. Eleanor, Sarah, and Rachel will meet us there. We need to walk through exactly how this will work. I've already started making arrangements, Olivia replied. Wait until you see what I've come up with. The 2-hour drive north to Seaview Inn gave Amy time to think. She replayed moments from her marriage, searching for signs she might have missed, warnings she had ignored. There had been a time when Kevin looked at her with genuine adoration, when their conversations lasted until dawn, when they couldn't bear to be apart for even a day. When had that changed? Had it been gradual, like a tide slowly receding until suddenly the shore was bare? Or had there been a definitive moment when he decided their marriage wasn't enough, when she wasn't enough? Amy shook her head, forcing herself to focus on the winding coastal highway. Those thoughts led nowhere productive. What mattered now was what came next. Seaview Inn appeared on the horizon, its elegant Cape Cod architecture gleaming white against the azure backdrop of the Pacific Ocean. Amy had helped Olivia select the property 2 years earlier, a neglected but structurally sound historical building perched on a cliff overlooking a secluded cove. With Amy's investment and Olivia's vision, they had transformed it into a boutique luxury destination that was quickly gaining a reputation among the wealthy, seeking privacy and exclusivity. As Amy pulled into the private parking area, she felt a surge of pride mingled with irony. The place she had helped create had become the setting for her husband's betrayal. Now it would be the stage for his comeuppance. Olivia was waiting at the entrance, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her olive skin glowing in the California sunshine. She enveloped Amy in a fierce hug. He's an idiot, she whispered fiercely. An absolute idiot. Amy returned the embrace, drawing strength from her friend's unwavering loyalty. Yes, he is, but a predictable one, which works to our advantage. Inside, Olivia led Amy to her private office overlooking the ocean. Spread across her desk were employee uniforms, schedules, and floor plans of the inn. The Wrights should be here any minute, Olivia said, checking her watch. I've cleared the necessary staff for Saturday morning. Your mother-in-law and sisters-in-law will have complete access. Amy nodded, examining the documents. And the suite, which one is he booking? Olivia pointed to a corner unit on the floor plan. The Sunset Suite. It has a private deck with a hot tub, king-size bed, and panoramic ocean views. It's our most requested room for... She hesitated. Romantic getaways. Amy's jaw tightened momentarily, but she quickly regained her composure. Perfect. Let's make sure it's a getaway they'll never forget. A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of the Wright women. Eleanor entered first, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her bearing regal despite the situation. Sarah and Rachel followed, both wearing expressions of grim determination. Ladies, Olivia greeted them. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy, but I think you'll agree our plan has merit. More than merit, Sarah said, setting her designer handbag on a nearby chair. It has justice. For the next hour, the 5 women huddled around Olivia's desk, mapping out every detail of Saturday's operation. Eleanor would handle housekeeping duties, entering the suite during the couple's planned excursion to the beach. Sarah would manage the front desk, checking them in with a professional courtesy that betrayed nothing. Rachel would serve them poolside, where Kevin and his companion had reserved lounge chairs for the afternoon. What does she look like, this woman? Eleanor asked, her voice carefully controlled. Olivia hesitated, glancing at Amy. It's okay, Amy assured her. I need to know too. Young, Olivia said finally. Mid to late 20s, blonde, tall, fit. Designer clothes, expensive handbag. She seems confident, like she belongs with him. Amy absorbed this information, trying to create a mental image of the woman who had supplanted her in her husband's affections. Young, of course she was young. Do we know her name? Sarah asked, ever the attorney looking for complete information. Olivia consulted her computer. The reservation is under Kevin's name only, but I did hear him call her Heather once. One of my staff mentioned she's been dropping things off at his office. She might work with him. Amy's head snapped up. Heather Davis, his assistant? The room fell silent as recognition dawned on every face. That little, Sarah began, but Amy cut her off. It doesn't matter who she is, she said firmly, though the revelation that it was someone so close to their lives, someone Amy had met at office parties, someone she had exchanged pleasantries with twisted the knife deeper. What matters is what happens on Saturday. Eleanor reached across the table and covered Amy's hand with her own. We're with you, dear, every step of the way. As they finalized their plans, Amy felt a complex mixture of emotions, grief for what she was losing, anger at the betrayal, but also profound gratitude for these women who had rallied around her without hesitation. In the wreckage of her marriage, she had discovered the unshakable foundation of family, not the one she had married into, but the one that had chosen her despite blood ties. There's one more thing, Olivia said as they prepared to leave. Amy, I think you should be here too, not just coordinating from afar, but present to witness everything. I have a private suite on the opposite wing. You can watch through our security system, see everything in real time. Amy nodded slowly. I need to see it, all of it. And afterward, Rachel asked gently, what then? Amy straightened her shoulders, her green eyes clear and determined. Afterward, I reclaim my life, starting with telling him it's over. The day passed in a blur of preparations. Amy drove back to the city, packed an overnight bag for her supposed business trip, and left it prominently by the front door. When Kevin returned home that evening, she greeted him with a carefully crafted normality that disguised the storm raging within her. I've got that financial conference in San Jose this weekend. She reminded him over a dinner she barely tasted. I'll be leaving early tomorrow morning. Kevin nodded, his attention mostly on his phone. Right. I've got that architectural symposium in San Diego anyway. We'll both be busy. Amy watched him lie to her face, noting the slight flush on his neck, the tell he'd had since college, whenever he wasn't being truthful. Had it always been this obvious? How had she missed it? Good luck with your presentation, she said, the irony of her words lost on him. Thanks, he replied absently, still not meeting her eyes. I'm sure it will be enlightening. I'm sure it will, Amy agreed, allowing herself a small, private smile. That night, as they prepared for bed on opposite sides of their master bathroom, Amy studied her husband surreptitiously. At 41, Kevin Wright was still a strikingly handsome man. His dark hair was just beginning to silver at the temples, giving him that distinguished look that his clients found so reassuring. His tall, athletic frame moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to admiration. Once, that confidence had attracted her. Now, she recognized it for what it often was: arrogance. As they slipped into bed, maintaining the careful distance that had become their norm, Amy felt a momentary wavering. Despite everything, there was history here: 8 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that, memories of laughter, of accomplishments celebrated together, of dreams shared in the darkness. Was she really ready to discard all of that? Then Kevin's phone buzzed on his nightstand. He reached for it instantly, turning slightly away as he read the message. A smile one Amy hadn't seen directed at her in months played at the corners of his mouth as he typed a response. And just like that, her resolve crystallized once more. Whatever they had shared was already gone, destroyed not by her discovery, but by his choices long before. "Good night, Kevin," she said, turning away from him. "Night," he mumbled, attention still on his phone. Amy closed her eyes, not to sleep but to envision tomorrow. By this time Saturday night, everything would be different. Her marriage would be over. Her future uncertain, but undeniably hers again. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, she felt a curious lightness, as if she were shedding a weight she hadn't fully acknowledged she was carrying. Morning arrived with a pale golden light filtering through the bedroom curtains. Amy rose early, showered, and dressed in casual but elegant traveling clothes. She had packed a separate bag hidden in her car trunk with what she would actually need for the weekend at Seaview. Kevin was in the kitchen when she came downstairs, already dressed in what she now recognized as his Weekend with Heather outfit, designer jeans, a casual button-down that emphasized his broad shoulders, expensive loafers. He was making coffee, his own overnight bag waiting by the garage door. "Early start," she asked, pouring herself a cup. "Traffic to San Diego," he replied with a shrug. "You heading out soon, too." "Yes, just about to leave," Amy said, taking a final look around the kitchen, the custom cabinetry they had selected together, the Italian marble countertops that had been his surprise anniversary gift 3 years ago. Would this be the last normal morning in this house? Probably. The realization brought more relief than regret. "Have a good weekend," Kevin said, kissing her cheek perfunctorily. "Call me if you need anything." "Oh, I don't think that will be necessary," Amy replied, the double meaning of her words lost on him. "I expect we'll both be quite occupied with our respective commitments." Kevin nodded absently, already checking his phone again, presumably for messages from Heather. Amy watched him for a moment, memorizing this version of him, the one who had taken her love and loyalty for granted, the one who had made a mockery of their vows. She wanted to remember this moment, this feeling, whenever doubt might creep in later. "Goodbye, Kevin," she said quietly, picking up her decoy suitcase and heading for the door. He raised a hand in distracted farewell, not looking up from his screen, not seeing the finality in her eyes or hearing it in her voice. As Amy drove north toward Seaview Inn, the coastal highway unspooling before her like a ribbon of possibility, she found herself singing along to the radio for the first time in months. Ahead lay pain, confrontation, and difficult decisions. But beyond that waited something even more powerful, the chance to rewrite her story with herself as both author and protagonist. Her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Everything is ready. Eleanor, Sarah, and Rachel are already here in costume. You won't believe how convincing they look." Amy smiled as she dictated her response through the car's system. "On my way. Let Operation Family Service begin." Seaview Inn looked different to Amy as she approached it for the second time in 24 hours. Yesterday, it had represented betrayal and heartbreak. Today, it symbolized reclamation and justice. Maestro. The elegant white building perched on the coastal cliff seemed to stand a little taller against the brilliant blue California sky, as if the very structure understood its role in the day's events. Amy parked her car in a secluded spot behind the staff quarters, out of sight from the main parking area where Kevin would be arriving with Heather in approximately 2 hours. Olivia was waiting at the service entrance, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "They're here, and they're amazing," Olivia said, embracing Amy quickly. Eleanor especially, you won't believe the transformation. Amy followed her friend through the back corridors of the inn, her heart rate accelerating with each step. They entered a small conference room that had been converted into an impromptu command center. Three women turned to face her, and for a moment, Amy didn't recognize them. Eleanor Wright, the elegant matriarch who typically dressed in tasteful designer clothes, now wore a simple gray housekeeping uniform. Her silver hair was tucked under a practical cap, and she'd removed her usual makeup and jewelry. She looked like any of the thousands of hard-working hotel housekeepers across America, invisible to guests like her son unless they needed something. Sarah had transformed equally dramatically. Her power attorney persona was completely subsumed beneath the professional, slightly bland demeanor of a front desk manager. She wore a navy blazer with the Seaview logo, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose. Rachel, the youngest and typically most casually dressed of the Wright women, now wore the crisp white shirt and black shorts of the pool staff, her hair in a high ponytail, a sea view visor shadowing her eyes. Well, Eleanor asked, spreading her arms and turning in a slow circle, will he recognize his own mother? Amy felt a smile spreading across her face, the first genuine one in days. Not a chance. Any of you. It's perfect. Olivia gestured to a bank of security monitors on the conference table. We've set up cameras in all the public areas and in the Sunset Suite. Obviously, the bathroom is off limits, but we'll see everything else. You can watch from here. Amy, I've also prepared this for you. She handed Amy an employee badge with the name Isabel and a housekeeping uniform matching Eleanor's. Just in case you want to get closer to the action, no one would look twice at a housekeeper. Amy took the badge, turning it over in her hands thoughtfully. I might just use this. Thank you. The five women spent the next hour reviewing their plan one final time. Sarah would check the couple in, maintaining a professional demeanor while subtly studying their interaction. Rachel would serve them drinks by the pool during their scheduled afternoon lounging time. Eleanor would enter their room during their planned beach walk to turn down the bed and leave fresh towels along with a few strategic surprises. Remember, Olivia cautioned, the goal is to make Kevin increasingly uncomfortable without revealing yourselves. Let him think he's going crazy. Let Heather think he's unstable. The confrontation comes later, on our terms. A security alert beeped on Olivia's phone. They're here, she announced, checking the notification. Black Audi just pulled into the main lot. Amy moved to the monitors, her heart pounding. There on the screen was Kevin's car, the one she had helped him select 3 years ago as a celebration of his biggest architectural commission. She watched as he stepped out, circled to the passenger side, and opened the door with a flourish. Heather Davis emerged, tossing her long blonde hair over one shoulder with practiced ease. She was everything Olivia had described: young, beautiful, confident. She wore a flowing summer dress that highlighted her slender figure, designer sunglasses perched on her perfect nose. As Kevin retrieved their luggage from the trunk, Heather surveyed the inn with a proprietary air, as if she were already the mistress of all she surveyed. Amy's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. Sarah, you're up, Olivia said quietly. Sarah nodded, straightening her blazer before heading out the door. Showtime! On the monitor, they watched as Kevin and Heather entered the elegant lobby with its soaring ceilings and panoramic ocean views. Sarah was already positioned behind the reception desk, her expression pleasantly blank as the couple approached. Good morning and welcome to Seaview Inn, Sarah greeted them, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Do you have a reservation with us? Yes, right, Kevin replied, placing his credit card on the counter. Yes, me. The Sunset Suite. Sarah tapped at her computer, the picture of professional efficiency. Ah, yes, Mr. Wright, We have you in our premium oceanfront accommodation for one night. And this is. She looked questioningly at Heather. There was a brief, awkward pause before Kevin said, "My guest, Heather Davis." "Lovely to meet you, Ms. Davis," Sarah said with a bland smile. "I'll need to see identification from both of you. Please." As Sarah processed their check-in, Amy watched Kevin closely on the monitor. He showed no sign of recognizing his older sister, not even a flicker of awareness. Sarah had altered not just her appearance, but her entire demeanor. The sharp, incisive attorney was completely hidden beneath the pleasant hotel manager. "Your suite is ready now," Sarah informed them, handing over key cards. "You'll be in our West Wing with direct access to the private cove. Breakfast is served in the main dining room from 7 to 10, and the pool area is open until 11 in the evening. Is there anything else I can assist you with today?" "We have a reservation for poolside service at 1, Kevin said, already turning away. "Of course, sir. I've noted that in your file. Enjoy your stay at Seaview." As a uniformed bellhop led the couple toward their suite, Sarah glanced directly at one of the hidden cameras and gave a subtle thumbs up. In the command center, the women watched as Kevin and Heather settled into the luxurious suite. The Sunset Suite was Seaview's premier accommodation, a spacious corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the dramatic coastal views, a king-size four-poster bed, a sitting area with a fireplace, and a private deck with a hot tub perched on the cliff's edge. "He's splurging on her," Olivia noted as Heather exclaimed over the bottle of champagne waiting in an ice bucket. "That's our premium package." "On our joint credit card," Amy added, her voice flat. "Not for long," Eleanor murmured, patting Amy's arm supportively. They watched as Kevin opened the champagne, pouring 2 glasses as Heather explored the suite with childish delight. When she disappeared into the bathroom, he checked his phone quickly, probably making sure Amy had texted no last-minute changes to her supposed business trip plans. Amy thought bitterly. "They're planning to head to the pool in about 30 minutes, Olivia said, checking the schedule. "Rachel, you should get into position." Rachel nodded, adjusting her visor. "I'll make sure his drink is extra special." "Nothing illegal," Amy cautioned, though she couldn't help smiling at Rachel's mischievous expression. "We want to unnerve him, not poison him. Just a little extra salt in his margarita," Rachel assured her. "And maybe a garnish that he particularly hates. Did you know your husband despises olives, says they taste like punishment?" Amy blinked in surprise. "I've been married to him for 8 years, and I didn't know that." "He's always picked them out of dishes since he was a child," Eleanor explained. "Just one of those little aversions. I'm surprised he never mentioned it." The realization that her husband's family knew things about him that she didn't sent a fresh wave of pain through Amy. How much of himself had Kevin kept hidden from her, even in the good years on the monitor? Heather emerged from the bathroom wearing a tiny red bikini barely covered by a sheer wrap. Kevin's appreciation was obvious as he pulled her close for a kiss that quickly grew passionate. Amy looked away, focusing instead on adjusting her employee badge. "I think I will join you out there," she said quietly. "I need to see this with my own eyes, not just on a screen." Olivia nodded, understanding. "A housekeeping cart is ready whenever you are." 30 minutes later, Amy was pushing a housekeeping cart down the hallway of the East Wing, opposite from where Kevin and Heather were staying. The uniform was surprisingly comfortable, and with her hair tucked under a cap and minimal makeup, she looked nothing like the polished marketing executive Kevin had left at home that morning. Through her earpiece, she could hear Olivia directing operations from the command center. "Rachel, they're approaching the pool area now. Kevin is wearing blue swim trunks. Heather's still in the red bikini with a white cover-up." Amy made her way toward the pool area via a service corridor, emerging onto the sun-drenched deck with its infinity-edge pool overlooking the Pacific. She busied herself collecting used towels from unoccupied loungers, keeping her head down but her eyes alert. Kevin and Heather made a striking couple as they claimed two premium loungers in a private cabana area. Kevin was still fit at 41, his architect's eye for aesthetics extending to his own appearance. Heather looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, her tanned skin glowing in the sunshine. They were beautiful together. Amy had to admit, like two perfect specimens designed for maximum visual impact. It hurt, but not as much as she had expected. There was something almost clinical about watching them now, as if she were observing strangers or characters in a film rather than her husband and his mistress. Rachel approached their cabana, order pad in hand. "Good afternoon and welcome to Seaview. May I get you something to drink?" Kevin glanced up, sunglasses hiding his eyes. "Two margaritas, please, salt on mine, none for the lady." "Of course, sir," Rachel replied, her voice pleasant and unremarkable. "Any food with that?" "Not yet," Heather answered, already settling back to sunbathe. "Maybe later." Rachel nodded and turned away, but not before shooting a quick glance in Amy's direction. Amy gave an imperceptible nod. So far, Kevin hadn't recognized his sister any more than he had recognized Sarah. As Amy continued her housekeeping charade, she overheard snippets of conversation between Kevin and Heather. "Should just tell her," Heather was saying, her voice carrying on the sea breeze. "It's been months. Kevin, I'm tired of being your secret." "It's complicated," Kevin replied, his tone placating. "The timing isn't right. There are financial considerations, the house, her family connections that could impact my business. So it's about money." Heather's voice had an edge now. "That's why you won't leave your wife." "It's not just money," Kevin sighed. "It's entanglements. Amy and I have history, but I promise I'm working on it. Soon." Amy's hand stilled on the towel she was folding. So he had been planning to leave her eventually, just on his own convenient timeline. And apparently, her primary value was the financial considerations and family connections she brought to the table. 8 years of marriage reduced to assets and liabilities. Rachel returned with the drinks, setting them on the small table between the loungers. "One margarita with salt," she announced, placing Kevin's drink complete with 3 olive garnishes in front of him. "And one without." Kevin stared at his drink, frowning slightly. "I didn't ask for olives." "I'm sorry, sir," Rachel replied blandly. "Would you like me to take it back?" He continued to stare at the glass, a furrow appearing between his brows. "No, it's fine. I'll just—" He picked out the olives with obvious distaste, setting them aside on a napkin. As Rachel walked away, Amy saw Kevin's gaze follow her, confusion flickering across his features. Recognition hadn't dawned yet, but something was tugging at his awareness, a familiar mannerism, perhaps, or the way Rachel moved. The seeds of doubt were being planted. Amy retreated to a service area to report back to Olivia and Eleanor. Phase 1 is underway. Rachel's olive trick definitely unsettled him. He was staring at her as she walked away. "Perfect," Olivia replied through the earpiece. "They've scheduled a walk to the private beach at 3. That's when Eleanor will access their room. Sarah reports that Heather asked about spa services for later this afternoon, just her, not Kevin. We're setting her up with our longest treatment, so you'll have plenty of time for the final confrontation." Amy checked her watch. It was just past 2, one more hour until Eleanor's part of the plan. She felt a curious calm settling over her, like the stillness before a storm. Everything was proceeding exactly as they had planned. By evening, her marriage would officially be over, but she would have reclaimed her dignity and her future. "I'm going to continue circulating," she told Olivia. I want to hear more of what they're saying to each other. Back at the pool, Amy positioned herself within earshot of the couple's cabana, methodically straightening loungers and replacing towels. Kevin was now on his second margarita, this one without olives, and his voice had taken on the slightly louder quality of someone feeling the effects of alcohol in the afternoon sun. Best design I've ever created, he was telling Heather. The Singapore client loves the concept. If they approve the final plans, it will be my first international skyscraper. That's amazing, baby, Heather cooed, though Amy detected more calculation than admiration in her tone. Will we go to Singapore together when construction starts? Kevin hesitated just a fraction too long. We'll see. It would mean being away for months. Months with no Amy around, Heather pointed out, a petulant note entering her voice. Just us. Let's not talk about that now, Kevin said, clearly uncomfortable. We're here to enjoy ourselves. Amy had heard enough. She slipped away, returning to the command center where Eleanor was preparing for her role. Ready? Amy asked the older woman, who was adjusting her housekeeping cap. Eleanor Wright's eyes were steely with determination. More than ready. That boy needs to learn that actions have consequences. As Eleanor headed off to play her part, Amy turned to Olivia. I want to be there when he returns to the room and finds whatever Eleanor has left. I want to see his face. Olivia nodded. We'll position you in the hallway. But Amy, she hesitated. Are you sure you're ready for the final confrontation? It's going to be ugly. Amy looked at her oldest friend, the woman who had stood by her through college breakups, career challenges, and now the implosion of her marriage. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Kevin's mouth opened and closed several times, no sound emerging. He stumbled backward into the room, and the women followed, Olivia closing the door behind them. What? How? Kevin sputtered, looking wildly from one face to another. What is this? What are you all doing here? Well, I was supposed to be at a business conference in San Jose, Amy replied, her voice deceptively calm. Just as you were supposed to be at an architectural symposium in San Diego. Funny how neither of us ended up where we claimed to be going. Understanding dawned on Kevin's face, followed quickly by defensiveness. Amy, I can explain. Can you? She interrupted. Can you explain the hotel charges on our credit card for the past 3 months? The late nights that didn't match your billable hours? The mysterious calls, the perfume on your clothes that wasn't mine? She gestured around the luxurious suite. Can you explain booking this romantic getaway with your assistant while lying to my face about where you'd be? Kevin's expression hardened. You had me followed, spied on, is that it? I didn't need to, Amy replied evenly. Olivia owns this place. I'm an investor. Your reservation was flagged automatically. At the mention of Olivia, Kevin's gaze snapped to her, recognition finally clicking into place. Your college roommate, of course. He ran a hand through his hair, desperation seeping into his voice. Look, Amy, this isn't what it seems. Heather and I, it's just a fling. Nothing serious. We can work through this. Eleanor made a sound of disgust. A fling, is that how you justify betraying your marriage vows? Kevin, I raised you better than this. Mom. Kevin seemed to truly register her presence for the first time. What are you doing here? And Sarah? Rachel? What is this? Some kind of intervention? More like a revelation, Sarah said coldly. A revelation of who you really are. Kevin's shock was giving way to anger now. So what was all this? He demanded, gesturing wildly. The hotel staff who kept looking familiar, the olive garnish, the brochures on the bed. You've all been playing some elaborate game with me. Not a game, Amy corrected him. A mirror showing you exactly what you've become, a man who lies to his wife, cheats with his assistant, and uses his family's money to fund his infidelity. The color that had drained from Kevin's face now returned in a rush of red. My family's money, I earn my own money. Amy, my firm is successful because of my talent, my hard work. Your firm got its start with loans from your mother and initial clients from my connections. Amy reminded him, that house we live in, we afforded the down payment because of my inheritance. Your car, a joint purchase with our shared assets. Don't pretend you've done this all on your own. Kevin, he opened his mouth to argue further, but a knock at the door silenced him. All eyes turned to the entrance as Olivia moved to answer it. Heather Davis stood in the doorway, her post-spa glow fading rapidly as she took in the crowded room. Her gaze moved from face to face before finally settling on Amy. You're his wife, she said, her voice small. Yes, Amy confirmed. And these are his mother and sisters. Welcome to the family reunion. Heather, please come in. I think you should be part of this conversation, too. Heather hesitated in the doorway, clearly calculating her options. For a moment, it seemed she might turn and flee, but curiosity, or perhaps a misplaced sense of loyalty to Kevin, propelled her forward. She stepped into the suite, the door closing behind her with a soft but final-sounding click. What's going on? She asked, moving to stand beside Kevin, though Amy noticed she maintained a careful distance between them. Not quite the united front of lovers caught in the act. What's going on? Jessica answered before Kevin could speak. Is that my brother has been exposed as a liar and a cheat to his wife, to his family, and I suspect to you as well. Heather's perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together in confusion. Your brother, I don't understand. Allow me to clarify, Amy said, her voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions swirling within her. The woman who checked you in at the front desk, that's Sarah Wright Chin, Kevin's older sister and a partner at Morrison and Ellis Law Firm. The woman who served you drinks by the pool is Rachel Wright, his younger sister and a pediatric surgeon at Memorial Hospital. And the housekeeper who left those interesting brochures on your bed is Eleanor Wright, Kevin's mother. With each introduction, Heather's eyes widened further, her gaze darting between the women and Kevin, who stood rigid with a mixture of anger and embarrassment darkening his features. You've been following us, Heather asked, a note of indignation entering her voice. Spying on us. That's invasion of privacy. Privacy, Eleanor echoed, her aristocratic eyebrows rising. My dear, you've been sleeping with a married man. I'm not sure the moral high ground is yours to claim. Heather flushed, her composure cracking. Kevin told me his marriage was essentially over, that you, she looked at Amy, were distant and career-obsessed and hadn't been a real couple in years. Amy felt the accusation like a physical blow but refused to show it. Is that so? How interesting, considering we attended his firm's holiday party together last month, took a weekend trip to Napa 3 weeks ago, and have been discussing having children this past year. She turned to Kevin. Were those discussions before or after you began sleeping with your assistant? Darling, Kevin's jaw worked as he struggled to find words. Amy, this isn't. We should discuss this privately, not like this. Why not like this? Amy challenged him. You didn't seem concerned about privacy when you were bringing another woman to a hotel paid for with our joint credit card. You didn't worry about discretion when you were kissing her by the pool at a property I partially own. Heather's head snapped toward Kevin. What does she mean, a property she partially owns? Olivia stepped forward. Seaview Inn is my establishment. Miss Davis, Amy is a silent partner and investor. She has been since we opened 2 years ago. You knew, Heather asked Kevin, her voice rising. You brought me to a hotel your wife owns. I didn't know, Kevin protested, finally finding his voice. How could I? She never told me she invested in Olivia's place. Perhaps for the same reason you never told me you were sleeping with your assistant. Amy replied evenly. Some secrets are easier to keep than to share, aren't they? The room fell silent as the weight of Amy's words settled over them. Heather had begun edging away from Kevin, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning comprehension. How long? Amy asked quietly. How long has this been going on? Kevin looked away, unable to meet her gaze. 4 months, he admitted finally. 7, Heather corrected, her voice small but clear. It's been 7 months. Amy absorbed this information with a calm that surprised even her. 7 months more than half a year of lies, of betrayal, of making a fool of her in her own marriage. The timeline meant it had started shortly after their anniversary trip to Hawaii, a trip she had planned as a surprise, a trip where she had thought they had reconnected and strengthened their bond. I see, she said simply. Then, turning to Heather, did you know he's been telling me he wants to start a family, that we've been looking at larger houses in the suburbs, that he's been discussing having me cut back on my career to focus on raising children? Heather's face paled. No, he told me you were both focused on your careers, that you didn't want children. Her voice hardened as she faced Kevin. He said you'd agreed the marriage had run its course, but were staying together for appearances and financial reasons. Appearances and financial reasons, Amy repeated, the words bitter on her tongue. How romantic. Kevin made a frustrated sound. This isn't helping anything. Yes, I lied to both of you. I made a mistake. A mistake, Eleanor interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. Forgetting to pay a bill is a mistake. Burning dinner is a mistake. Systematically deceiving your wife for more than half a year while pursuing another woman is a choice. Kevin, a series of deliberate choices. Mom, please, Kevin pleaded. This isn't your business. You made it my business, Eleanor replied firmly. When you involved your family in your deception, when you lied to me about where you were spending weekends, when you used the values I tried to instill in you as a shield for your dishonorable behavior. Sarah stepped forward, her attorney's instincts evidently taking over. Amy has all the evidence she needs for a fault-based divorce that would be very much in her favor. Kevin hotel receipts, credit card statements, eyewitness accounts, even surveillance footage from this very inn, not to mention the testimony of your mistress, should she choose to cooperate. Heather's head snapped up at the word mistress, her eyes flashing with anger. I am not anyone's mistress. I was led to believe his marriage was over in all but name. She turned to Kevin, tears of anger and humiliation welling in her eyes. You told me you were just waiting for the right time to tell her that once the Carson project was complete, you would file for divorce. Was that a lie? Kevin's silence was all the confirmation she needed. Heather grabbed her purse from where she had dropped it upon entering the room. I can't believe I fell for this, she said, shaking her head. 7 months of my life wasted on a man who couldn't even be honest about his dishonesty. She glanced at Amy. I'm sorry. I truly didn't know the extent of his lies, though that doesn't excuse my part in this. With that, Heather turned and walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. Don't call me. Kevin, don't text. Don't come to the office. I'll have my desk cleared out by Monday and my letter of resignation emailed to HR. She looked at him with disgust. I'd rather be unemployed than work another day for a man like you. The door closed behind her with finality, leaving an awkward silence in its wake. Kevin stood alone now, physically isolated in the room in a way that mirrored his sudden social isolation. His shoulders slumped as the full impact of the situation appeared to hit him. Well, Rachel said after a moment, That was actually more satisfying than I expected. Olivia cleared her throat. I think perhaps I should give you all some privacy for the remainder of this family discussion. I'll be in my office if you need anything. She squeezed Amy's arm supportively before slipping out, leaving the Wrights to settle their affairs. Amy took a deep breath, finding her center. This confrontation had gone even better than she had anticipated, but the most important part was still to come. She opened her purse and removed a thick envelope, placing it on the coffee table between herself and Kevin. What is this? He asked, eyeing the envelope warily. Divorce papers. Amy replied calmly. Already drawn up by Sarah's colleague who specializes in family law. All they need is your signature. Kevin barked a laugh of disbelief. You can't be serious. You expect me to sign divorce papers right now without even reading them or consulting my own attorney. The terms are quite generous considering the circumstances. Sarah informed him. Amy retains the house and her investments, including her stake in Seaview. You keep your architectural firm and your personal assets. No alimony in either direction. A clean break. And if I refuse, Kevin challenged, a flicker of his usual arrogance returning, then we do this the hard way, Amy said simply. A public, contested divorce with all the evidence of your infidelity presented in court, your clients finding out, your professional reputation suffering, your personal life becoming gossip fodder for the entire city. Eleanor stepped closer to her son, her expression a complex mixture of disappointment and residual maternal concern. Don't be a fool twice in one day. Kevin, you've already lost so much. Don't lose your dignity as well. Kevin looked at each face in turn, his mother's disappointed but resolute expression, Sarah's cold professional assessment, Rachel's open contempt, and finally Amy's calm determination. Whatever he saw there seemed to deflate the last of his resistance. Fine, he said, reaching for the envelope. But I want it noted that I'm signing under duress. Noted, Sarah replied dryly. Though I'd argue the only duress present is the consequence of your own actions. As Kevin reviewed and signed the documents, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Amy watched the man she had loved for more than a decade, trying to reconcile the Kevin she had married with the stranger before her now. Had he always been this person, and she had simply failed to see it? Or had he changed over time, transforming so gradually that she hadn't noticed until it was too late? It's done, Kevin said finally, sliding the signed papers back across the table to Amy. I hope you're all satisfied with your little sting operation. Satisfied isn't the word I'd choose, Amy replied, gathering the documents. But it was necessary not just for me, but for you too. You've been living a double life, Kevin. That kind of deception exacts a toll, even on the deceiver. Kevin's laugh was hollow. Spare me the psychological analysis. Amy, you got what you wanted, the moral high ground and the house. What I wanted, Amy said quietly, was a husband who honored his vows, a partner who respected me enough to be honest, even when the truth was difficult. What I'm settling for is my freedom and self-respect. Eleanor approached her son, placing a hand on his arm. You need to leave now, Kevin. Find somewhere to stay tonight that isn't here. We can talk tomorrow when you've had time to reflect on your choices. Kevin shook off her touch. Talk about what? How my entire family conspired against me, humiliated me. No, Eleanor replied firmly. About how you're going to rebuild your life and your character after this. About how you're going to make amends, not just to Amy, but to yourself, because the man I raised you to be would be ashamed of these actions. Kevin had no response to that. He gathered his belongings in silence, the weight of his family's judgment visibly heavy on his shoulders. At the door, he paused, turning back to Amy. I did love you, he said, his voice softer than before. I know you won't believe that now, but it's true. Amy met his gaze steadily. I believe you did, in your way. But love without respect and honesty isn't enough. It never was. After Kevin departed, the four women remained in the suite, the tension slowly dissipating like fog under morning sun. Rachel was the first to break the silence, pulling a bottle of champagne, real champagne, not Eleanor's substituted cider from the mini refrigerator. I think this calls for a toast, she declared, locating glasses. To Amy, who faced betrayal with more grace and strategic thinking than anyone I've ever known. To Amy, Sarah and Eleanor echoed as the glasses were filled and distributed. Amy accepted the champagne, a complex swirl of emotions making it difficult to speak for a moment relief, sadness, vindication, and beneath it all, a curious sense of lightness, as if a weight she hadn't fully acknowledged had been lifted from her shoulders. Thank you, she said finally, looking at each woman in turn, for believing me, for supporting me, for helping me face this with dignity instead of just anger. We're family, Eleanor reminded her, echoing her earlier words. That doesn't change because of this. But everything else will change, Amy said, the reality of her new situation beginning to sink in. I'm starting over at 39. Sarah shook her head firmly. Not starting over, starting anew. There's a difference. You're not back at square one. Amy, you're beginning a new chapter with all the wisdom, experience, and strength you've gained. She added with a small smile. Plus, you have us. The distinction resonated with Amy. She wasn't the same woman who had married Kevin 8 years ago. She was stronger, wiser, more self-assured, and she wasn't alone. A knock at the door announced Olivia's return. She entered, bearing a tray of hors d'oeuvres to accompany the champagne, her expression curious. Is it done? Amy nodded, raising her glass. It's done? The papers are signed. Then I'd like to propose a different sort of arrangement, Olivia said, setting down the tray. Since you're now officially single and a part owner of this place, why not stay for a while? The owner's suite is available, and God knows this place could use your marketing expertise to reach its full potential. Amy blinked in surprise. You want me to work with you at Seaview? Not just work with me, be my full partner. Olivia clarified. You invested financially, but I've always valued your business sense more than your money. Take some time away from the city. Help me make this place the premier boutique destination on the coast. Consider it a transition period. The offer was unexpected but immediately appealing. The thought of returning to the house she had shared with Kevin, sleeping in their bed, seeing reminders of their life together in every room, it filled her with dread. But here, in this beautiful place overlooking the Pacific, with her closest friend and a fresh challenge to focus on, here she might actually begin to heal. I'd need to take a leave of absence from the firm, Amy mused, already considering the logistics, and figure out what to do with the house long term. All manageable details, Eleanor assured her. The important thing is that you do what's right for you now, not what's convenient for anyone else. Amy looked around at these women who had stood by her through her darkest moment, her friend of 20 years, her mother-in-law who had chosen her over blood ties, her sisters-in-law who had become true sisters in spirit. For the first time since discovering Kevin's betrayal, she felt a genuine smile spread across her face. To new beginnings, then, she said, raising her glass, and to family the kind we choose, not just the kind we're born or married into. To family, they echoed, glasses clinking in the golden afternoon light. As twilight embraced the coast, Amy found herself alone on the private deck of what had been meant to be Kevin and Heather's romantic retreat. The other women had departed: Eleanor, Sarah, and Rachel back to their respective homes, Olivia to attend to the business of running the inn. Amy settled into a comfortable lounger, watching as the sun descended toward the horizon, painting the Pacific in streaks of gold and crimson. The champagne had left her with a pleasant warmth, though she knew the true comfort came from the love and solidarity she had experienced today. She pulled her phone from her pocket, glancing at the screen. 3 missed calls from Kevin, a text message pleading for another conversation. Just the two of us. Amy silenced the phone and slipped it back into her pocket. Whatever Kevin had to say could wait until the raw edges of today had time to heal. Instead, she focused on the rhythmic sound of waves breaking against the cliffs below, letting the ocean's ancient cadence soothe her tumultuous thoughts. The confrontation had gone better than she could have hoped. Kevin exposed, the divorce papers signed, her dignity intact. Yet beneath the triumph lay a profound sadness for what might have been, for the future they had planned together that would now never come to pass. Amy closed her eyes, allowing herself to finally feel the full weight of her grief, not just for the end of her marriage, but for the loss of the man she had thought Kevin was, or perhaps the man he had once been before ambition and ego had eroded his character. A soft knock at the suite door pulled her from her reverie. Assuming it was Olivia, Amy called out, "Come in." The door opened to reveal not Olivia but Eleanor, carrying a small overnight bag. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said hesitantly. "I was halfway home when I realized I couldn't bear the thought of you spending this night alone." Amy felt a rush of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "You're not intruding at all," she said, her voice catching. "I'm glad you came back." Eleanor set her bag down and joined Amy on the deck, settling into the adjacent lounger. For a long moment, both women sat in companionable silence, watching as the last sliver of sun disappeared beneath the horizon, leaving behind a sky ablaze with fading light. "I keep thinking about when Kevin was a boy," Eleanor said finally, her voice soft with memory. "He was so sensitive, so eager to please his father. William was a good man in many ways, but hard to satisfy, especially with his sons. Nothing Kevin did was ever quite enough." Amy turned to look at her mother-in-law, or former mother-in-law. She supposed, though the legal distinction seemed meaningless in this moment. "After William died," Eleanor continued, "Kevin threw himself into becoming what he thought his father would have wanted: successful, respected, the kind of man who had the perfect life on paper. I watched it happening and didn't say enough, didn't do enough to remind him that his father's approval wasn't worth sacrificing his integrity." "You can't blame yourself for Kevin's choices," Amy said gently. "No, but I can acknowledge my part in shaping the man he became." Eleanor sighed. "The irony is that William would have been appalled by what Kevin did to you, for all his flaws. He believed absolutely in honoring commitments." Amy considered this glimpse into Kevin's formative years. This context that helped explain, though, not excuse the man he had become. "I wish I had known more of this," she said quietly. "Maybe I could have understood him better." Perhaps, or perhaps it wouldn't have changed anything. Eleanor reached across the space between them to take Amy's hand. "What matters now is that you have the chance to build a life that's truly yours, not one constrained by Kevin's insecurities or expectations." "I'm not even sure what that looks like yet," Amy admitted. "For so long, everything has been Amy and Kevin. Now it's just Amy. And that," Eleanor said firmly, "is more than enough." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the two women fell into conversation about possibilities: Amy's potential partnership with Olivia, ideas for expanding Seaview's appeal, the leave of absence she would request from her firm. Gradually, the focus shifted from what Amy was losing to what she might create in this new chapter of her life. Later, as they shared a light dinner delivered by room service, Amy found herself laughing at one of Eleanor's wry observations about hotel management. The sound of her own laughter startled her. It felt foreign after days of tension and grief, yet undeniably healing. You know, Eleanor said, studying Amy's face in the candlelight, I was worried about you, but I shouldn't have been. You're going to be more than fine. How can you be so sure? Eleanor smiled, the expression softening the aristocratic lines of her face. Because I've never met anyone who faces reality more squarely than you do. Amy, you don't hide from difficult truths or make excuses. That's rare, and it's precisely what will carry you through this. Amy felt the weight of Eleanor's faith in her, a counterbalance to the doubt that had plagued her since discovering Kevin's betrayal. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. As the evening deepened into night, Amy found herself reflecting on the strange alchemy of the day, how betrayal had been transformed into liberation, how the ending of one family bond had revealed the strength of others. Tomorrow would bring practical concerns and decisions, but tonight, surrounded by the beauty of sea view and the steadfast presence of a woman who had chosen to be her family, Amy allowed herself to believe in the possibility of healing. Outside, the endless Pacific stretched beneath a canopy of stars, a reminder that some things remained constant even as life's landscape shifted and changed. Amy Wright, no longer defined by her marriage, but by her own resilience, stood at the threshold of a future she hadn't planned but might yet embrace. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since discovering Kevin's betrayal, uncertainty felt less like fear and more like freedom. The following morning, Amy woke to sunlight streaming through the oceanfront windows of the Sunset Suite. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was or why she was there. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back, the confrontation with Kevin, the signed divorce papers, the beginning of her new reality. Eleanor had departed earlier, slipping out with a note promising to check in later and reminding Amy that she was never truly alone. Amy appreciated both the support and the space to process on her own terms. She showered and dressed in clothes Olivia had brought from the owner's suite, then made her way to the small dining room reserved for staff. Despite technically being an owner, Amy found herself drawn to this more casual space rather than the formal dining room where guests took their breakfast. Olivia was already there, reviewing spreadsheets while nursing a cup of coffee. She looked up as Amy entered, her expression brightening. There she is, Olivia said, rising to embrace her friend. How are you feeling this morning? Like I've lived a decade in 24 hours, Amy admitted, returning the hug before pouring herself coffee from the carafe on the table. But also, lighter, somehow. Freedom will do that, Olivia nodded, sliding a plate of fresh fruit and pastries toward Amy. Eat, we have a lot to talk about. As Amy ate, Olivia outlined her vision for their partnership at Seaview. The inn was doing well, but Olivia believed Amy's marketing expertise could elevate it to the top-tier destination she had always envisioned. They discussed potential campaigns targeting affluent couples, corporate retreat packages, and wellness weekends. I've been wanting to expand our wellness offerings, Olivia explained, pulling up photos on her tablet. The old boathouse could be converted into a yoga studio with those views. And that unused parcel on the north side of the property would be perfect for individual meditation cabins. Amy found herself genuinely excited by the possibilities, her professional instincts awakening after months of emotional numbness. We could position Seaview as not just a luxury escape, but a transformative experience, she suggested, ideas flowing freely, especially for women at transition points in their lives. Like you, Olivia observed gently. Like me, Amy agreed. There's something powerful about finding yourself in a beautiful place when your life is in flux. It creates space for reinvention. Their brainstorming session was interrupted by a call on Olivia's phone. Her expression tightened as she listened to the caller. "He's what?" she asked, shooting a concerned glance at Amy. "No, don't confront him. I'll handle it." She hung up and sighed. "Kevin's back. He's in the lobby, demanding to see you. Says he won't leave until you talk to him." Amy felt a flicker of anxiety, quickly replaced by resolve. "I knew he'd be back. The text messages all night made that clear." She straightened her shoulders. "I'll talk to him, but not alone. Would you mind being there?" "I wouldn't be anywhere else," Olivia assured her. They made their way to Olivia's office, which overlooked the main entrance. Through the window, Amy could see Kevin pacing in the elegantly appointed lobby, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. He clearly hadn't slept much, if at all. "Have security on standby," Amy instructed Olivia. "I don't think he'd do anything rash, but—" "Already done," Olivia confirmed. "Marco is right outside the door, and he's built like a linebacker." Amy took a deep breath, centered herself, and nodded. "Let's get this over with." Olivia made the call to send Kevin up. Moments later, there was a sharp knock at the office door. "Mon." Olivia opened it to reveal Kevin, looking haggard and desperate, a far cry from the confident architect who had checked into Seaview just yesterday. "Amy," he said, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk." "Then talk," Amy replied calmly, remaining seated behind Olivia's desk. "I'm listening." Kevin glanced at Olivia, who had positioned herself by the door. "Privately, that's not going to happen," Amy said firmly. "Say what you came to say. Kevin." Olivia stays. He ran a hand through his rumpled hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Fine. I want to tear up those divorce papers. They aren't valid anyway. I was coerced, surrounded by your squad of enforcers." He gestured wildly. "This whole thing was a setup, a manipulation. You can't just ambush someone and expect legally binding decisions to result." "Is that your professional legal opinion?" Amy asked mildly. "Because Sarah consulted with an actual attorney. The papers are valid." "Kevin, you weren't coerced. You were caught. There's a difference." "I made a mistake," he insisted, his voice cracking. "A terrible mistake that I regret more than you can possibly imagine. But 8 years of marriage deserve more than a summary execution. We should go to counseling, work through this." "Why?" The simple question seemed to throw Kevin off balance. Amy continued, "What exactly are we saving? Kevin, a marriage where you've been living a double life for 7 months, where you told another woman our relationship was just for show, where you lied to my face every single day." "Because I love you," he said, his expression earnest. "I know that sounds hollow after what I did, but it's true. Heather she was a distraction, a mistake, but not what I really wanted." "No." Amy raised an eyebrow. "Then why did you buy her jewelry from Tiffany's? Why did you spend weekends with her at luxury hotels? Why did you confide in her about our marriage?" Kevin's face flushed. "I can explain all of that." "I'm sure you can." Amy interrupted. "You've always been good at explanations, Kevin, at crafting narratives that make you the hero of every story. But I'm not interested in another story. I'm interested in truth. And the truth is, our marriage ended the moment you decided to betray it, not yesterday when I found out, but 7 months ago when you made that choice." "People make mistakes," Kevin insisted, taking a step closer to the desk. "Marriages recover from affairs all the time." "Some do," Amy acknowledged, "but only when there's genuine remorse, not just regret at being caught, only when the foundation is still solid enough to rebuild. Ours isn't. How can you be so cold about this?" Kevin demanded, anger flaring, acting like we're just some business deal gone wrong. We loved each other. Amy, that has to count for something. Amy studied the man before her, the man she had once believed would be her lifelong partner. There was a desperation in his eyes that might have moved her once, but now she recognized it for what it was, the panic of a man losing control of a situation, not the genuine anguish of someone losing love. It did count, she said quietly. It counted every time I trusted you without question, every time I defended you to colleagues who found you arrogant, every time I put your career ahead of my own because I believed in us as a team, but you cashed in all that goodwill. Kevin, there's nothing left in the account. Kevin's shoulders slumped, defeat finally registering in his posture. So that's it. 8 years just erased, not erased. Amy corrected him. Completed. Our chapter is finished. Kevin, it's time to start a new one separately. And I suppose you've already started yours, he said bitterly, gesturing around the office. Quite the convenient landing spot Olivia provided, almost like it was planned. Olivia, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, stepped forward. That's enough, Kevin. You don't get to rewrite this story to make yourself the victim. Amy discovered your betrayal by accident, and everything that followed was a consequence of your actions, not some conspiracy against you. Kevin looked like he might argue further, but something in Olivia's expression made him reconsider. He turned back to Amy, his anger fading into resignation. What do I tell people? He asked, suddenly sounding lost. Clients? Friends? My team at the firm? It was such a Kevin question focused on appearances, on managing perceptions. Amy might have found it infuriating once, but now it only confirmed the rightness of her decision. Tell them the truth, she suggested. Or don't. That's no longer my concern. She stood, signaling that the conversation was over. Goodbye, Kevin. I wish you well, but I need you to respect that this is finished. For a moment, he looked like he might continue to argue. Then, with a last despairing glance, he turned and walked out of the office, shoulders hunched in defeat. When the door closed behind him, Amy released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Do you think he'll be back? Olivia shook her head. Not if he has any sense left. That was... She hesitated, searching for the right word. Final, Amy supplied. It had to be. You were magnificent, Olivia said admiringly. I don't think I've ever seen anyone handle a confrontation with such dignity. Amy managed a small smile. I had a good night's sleep in a luxury suite. It does wonders for one's composure. But as she turned to look out the window, watching Kevin's defeated figure cross the parking lot to his car, Amy felt the full weight of what had just transpired. 8 years of shared life ended in a 20-minute conversation. It was necessary. It was right, but it was also profoundly sad. Olivia seemed to sense her mood. Why don't we take a walk on the beach, clear our heads before diving into business plans? Amy nodded gratefully, and together they headed down to the private cove below the inn. The tide was out, revealing a crescent of pristine sand bordered by dramatic rock formations. As they walked, the rhythmic sound of waves washing ashore soothed Amy's raw emotions. You know, Olivia said after they had walked in companionable silence for a while, when I bought this place, everyone thought I was crazy. A single woman running a luxury inn on her own recipe for disaster. They said, I remember, Amy smiled. That loan officer at Pacific Bank was particularly condescending. Exactly, but I knew something they didn't, that I wasn't actually alone. I had you, even if only as a silent partner and occasional advisor. Olivia stopped, turning to face her friend. What I'm trying to say is, Sometimes the most important support isn't visible to the outside world. Sometimes it's the quiet belief of someone who sees your vision and says, "Yes, this makes sense," when everyone else is questioning your sanity. Amy felt tears prick at her eyes. "Are you trying to make me cry on this beautiful beach? Because it's working." Olivia laughed, linking her arm through Amy's as they continued walking. "I'm trying to remind you that you've always been more than Kevin Wright's wife. You've been my rock, Eleanor's daughter in all but biology, Sarah and Rachel's sister by choice. Those connections don't disappear because your marital status changed." "I know," Amy said softly. "That's what got me through yesterday, what will get me through tomorrow, and the day after." As they turned back toward the inn, now silhouetted against the late morning sky, Amy felt a curious sense of possibility unfurling within her, as if the ending of her marriage had created space for something new to grow, something entirely her own. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Amy took a formal leave of absence from Anderson and Burke, arranged for a storage company to pack her personal belongings from the house she had shared with Kevin, and began immersing herself in the operations of Seaview Inn. Olivia had set her up in the owner's suite, a spacious apartment tucked into the inn's east wing, with its own private entrance and a stunning view of the coastline. The space was beautifully appointed but impersonal, providing Amy with a blank canvas upon which to create her next chapter. On her fourth day at Seaview, Amy was reviewing the inn's social media strategy when Sarah called. "How's the coastal retreat treating you?" Sarah asked after they had exchanged greetings. "Better than I expected," Amy admitted. "There's something healing about waking up to the sound of waves every morning." "Good. You deserve some peace." Sarah paused, and Amy could sense there was more to the call than a casual check-in. "What is it?" she prompted. "You've got that I have information tone in your voice." Sarah chuckled. "Can't hide anything from you?" "Yes, I do have information. Heather Davis came to see me yesterday." Amy sat up straighter, surprised. "Heather? Why would she contact you?" "She wanted legal advice about her employment situation with Kevin," Sarah explained. "But that's not the interesting part. She also wanted to apologize to you, through me. Said she'd respect your wishes if you didn't want contact. But she has information she thinks you should have." Amy felt a mixture of wariness and curiosity. "What kind of information?" "She wouldn't tell me specifics, just that it involves Kevin's business practices and some things she observed as his assistant that troubled her." Sarah's voice took on its professional tone. "As your former sister-in-law but current friend who happens to be an attorney, I'd advise meeting with her. If nothing else, it might provide closure." Amy considered the suggestion. The last person she wanted to see was the woman who had been sleeping with her husband. Yet something in Sarah's tone suggested this wasn't just about emotional closure. There might be practical implications as well. "All right," she decided, "but not here at Seaview, somewhere neutral. There's a cafe in Monterey called Harbor Light. Quiet, discreet, good coffee. I told her you might be in touch, and that's where you'd suggest if you agreed. Always 3 steps ahead," Amy said with affection. "What would I do without you?" "Let's hope you never have to find out," Sarah replied warmly. "Call me after, okay?" The following afternoon, Amy found herself seated at a corner table in Harbor Light, nursing an oat milk latte as she waited for Heather to arrive. She had chosen the spot with her back to the wall, giving her a clear view of the entrance, a small defensive measure that made her feel more in control. Precisely at 2 o'clock, Heather Davis walked through the door. She looked different from the confident young woman at the pool, more subdued in simple jeans and a sweater. Her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her eyes scanned the cafe until they landed on Amy, and she approached with visible trepidation. "Thank you for meeting me," Heather said, remaining standing until Amy gestured to the chair across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, Me admitted. But Sarah suggested it might be important. Heather nodded, ordering a plain coffee when the server approached. Once they were alone again, she took a deep breath. First, I want to apologize again. I know it doesn't change anything, but I truly believed Kevin when he said your marriage was essentially over. Amy regarded her steadily. Let's skip past the apologies. Heather, Sarah mentioned you have information about Kevin's business practices. Yes. Heather reached into her bag and withdrew a flash drive, placing it on the table between them. For the past 3 months, I've been documenting some irregularities in how Kevin handles client billing and project expenses. At first, I told myself it was just aggressive accounting, but then I found evidence that he's been inflating material costs on the Carson project and pocketing the difference. Amy stared at the flash drive, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. That's fraud. Yes, and it gets worse. Heather lowered her voice. He's been cutting corners on material quality for the Singapore high-rise, substituting lower-grade steel than what was specified in the contract, but billing for the premium materials. The potential safety implications. She shook her head, clearly disturbed. Why are you telling me this? Amy asked, though she already suspected the answer. Because you're still technically an owner of Right Architectural through your marriage, even with the divorce papers filed. Heather had clearly done her research. If this comes to light and eventually, you could be financially implicated. I thought you should have the chance to protect yourself. Amy studied the younger woman, looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. She found none, just what appeared to be genuine concern and perhaps a desire for redemption. There's more, Heather continued when Amy remained silent. The reason he's been so desperate to keep up appearances, to maintain this image of success, his firm is in trouble. The Singapore project was supposed to be his salvation, but he underbid it dramatically to beat out competitors. The only way to make a profit was to cut corners and inflate other costs. This explains so much Kevin's increasingly lavish spending, despite financial pressures. His desperate need for Amy's family connections to secure clients. His panic at the thought of a public divorce that might damage his professional reputation. How long have you known about this? Amy asked quietly. Heather looked down, shame evident in her posture. I started noticing discrepancies about 4 months ago. I confronted him once, and he explained it away, said it was standard industry practice, that everyone did it. I wanted to believe him. She looked up, meeting Amy's gaze directly. That's why I've been documenting everything since then. I needed to be sure. And now that you are sure, what do you intend to do? I've already done it, Heather said with unexpected firmness. I submitted an anonymous ethics complaint to the Architectural Licensing Board yesterday, with copies of key documents, not everything I have, but enough to trigger an investigation. I didn't use my name because… She hesitated. Because you were involved with him. Amy finished for her. It could look like a vindictive ex-employee. Heather nodded. Exactly. But I wanted you to have all the evidence, everything I've gathered. What you do with it is up to you, but at least you're informed now. Amy picked up the flash drive, turning it over in her fingers as she contemplated the implications. Thank you for this. I can't say I'm happy about any of it, but knowledge is preferable to ignorance. There's one more thing, Heather said hesitantly. The Singapore clients are flying in next week for a project review. If they discover the material substitutions, it could be catastrophic for the firm, Amy concluded, and potentially for anyone associated with it. Yes, Heather stood, clearly sensing the meeting was concluding. I should go, but I want you to know, for whatever it's worth, that I never intended to hurt you. I made poor choices based on what I believed was true. Amy looked up at the younger woman, seeing not the temptress she had imagined, but a person who, like herself, had been manipulated by Kevin's skillful lies. "We make decisions with the information we have at the time," she said finally. "All we can do afterward is try to correct course." After Heather left, Amy remained at the cafe, staring at the flash drive and contemplating her next move. Her first instinct was to call Sarah for legal advice, but something held her back. This wasn't just a legal issue, it was a moral one, with potential implications for many people beyond herself. She paid for her coffee and walked to the nearby waterfront, needing the clarity that came with movement and fresh air. As she watched fishing boats returning to harbor in the late afternoon light, Amy considered her options. She could distance herself completely. The divorce proceedings were already in motion, and she could legally separate herself from Wright Architectural before any investigations became public. She could use the information as leverage with Kevin, ensuring a more favorable divorce settlement, or she could take a more active role, perhaps even working with authorities to minimize the damage to innocent parties like clients and employees. What would the Amy of a week ago have done? Probably protected Kevin, helped him find a way to fix the mess while preserving his reputation. But that Amy had believed in their partnership, had thought they were building something meaningful together. The Amy of today knew better. She pulled out her phone and dialed not Sarah, but Eleanor. "I need your advice," she said when Kevin's mother answered. "And it involves Kevin, but not in the way you might think." 1 week later, Amy sat in a conference room at the offices of Morrison and Ellis, surrounded by a team of attorneys including Sarah. Across the table sat Kevin, flanked by his own legal representation, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. "This is blackmail," he hissed, glaring at Amy. "Using information Heather stole to force my hand?" "No, Kevin," Sarah corrected calmly. "This is an opportunity. Ms. Wright is offering you a chance to mitigate the damage of your actions before the licensing board's investigation reaches its conclusion." The plan they had developed was straightforward. Kevin would make full disclosure to the Singapore clients about the material substitutions, offering to correct the issues at his own expense. He would implement similar remediation for any other compromised projects. In exchange, Amy would sign an agreement releasing her from any liability associated with Wright Architectural, while retaining a small percentage of the firm that would convert to a pure financial interest with no management rights. "And if I refuse," Kevin challenged, "then we walk away," Amy said simply. "The licensing board already has enough to open a formal investigation. The evidence Heather provided will eventually come to light. The only question is whether you get ahead of it or let it destroy everything you've built." Kevin's attorney, a pragmatic woman in her 50s, leaned over to whisper in his ear. He listened, his jaw clenched, before finally nodding in resignation. "Fine," he said tightly. "I'll sign the agreement and make the disclosures. But I want it on record that I believe these allegations are exaggerated." "Noted," Sarah replied dryly, sliding the documents across the table. "Asian," as Kevin signed each page with angry, jabbing motions. Amy felt no triumph, only a profound sadness. This was the man she had loved, trusted, built a life with, reduced now to a cornered adversary fighting to salvage what he could from the wreckage of his own making. When the signing was complete and Kevin had departed with his attorney, Sarah turned to Amy with concern. "Are you okay?" "Not really," Amy admitted. "But I will be. This was the right thing to do, wasn't it? Not just for me, but for everyone involved." "Absolutely," Sarah assured her. "You gave him a chance to fix his mistakes before they caused real harm. That's more than most would have done in your position." Amy nodded, gathering her copy of the signed agreements. I should get back to Seaview. Olivia and I have a meeting with potential investors for the Wellness Center expansion. Of course. Sarah walked her to the elevator. Eleanor mentioned Sunday dinner this weekend. You'll be there. I wouldn't miss it, Amy promised, touched by the continued inclusion in Wright family gatherings despite the divorce. The drive back to Seaview gave Amy time to process the meeting's outcome. She had protected herself legally while also ensuring that innocent parties wouldn't suffer for Kevin's misdeeds. It wasn't a perfect solution. Kevin would still face professional consequences, but it was the most balanced approach she could devise. As she pulled into the inn's private drive, Amy felt the tension of the past week begin to dissipate. Seaview had become her sanctuary, a place where she could reimagine her life on her own terms. Olivia was waiting on the main terrace, reviewing presentation materials for their investor meeting. "How did it go?" she asked as Amy joined her. "As well as could be expected," Amy replied, settling into a chair overlooking the ocean. "The agreement is signed. Kevin will make the necessary disclosures and corrections. Yardia. And you're officially free of Wright Architectural's potential liabilities," Olivia noted with satisfaction. "Smart move, keeping that small percentage as a silent investor. If Kevin manages to turn things around, you'll still benefit financially." "That was Sarah's idea," Amy acknowledged. "I was ready to walk away completely." "Well, I'm glad you didn't. You helped build that firm as much as he did, even if your name isn't on the door." Olivia studied her friend's face. "You look exhausted. Are you sure you're up for this investor meeting?" Amy straightened, summoning a smile. "Absolutely. This expansion is exactly what I need to focus on something positive, something built on honesty and real partnership." Olivia squeezed her hand in understanding. "That's what I've always loved about you. Amy Wright. You don't just survive adversity, you transform it into opportunity." The investor meeting went even better than anticipated. The wealthy couple from San Francisco, longtime guests at Seaview, were immediately captivated by Olivia and Amy's vision for expanding the property into a wellness destination. By the time dessert was served in the private dining room, they had verbally committed to providing the capital needed for the first phase of development. Later that evening, Amy stood on the balcony of her suite, watching moonlight play across the water. The events of the past 10 days had transformed her life completely, from seemingly secure wife to betrayed spouse to independent woman charting a new course. There was still pain, still moments when grief for what she had lost would wash over her unexpectedly, but increasingly, those moments were interspersed with genuine excitement for what lay ahead. Her phone chimed with a message from Eleanor's Sunday dinner. 5 p.m. Rachel's making her famous lasagna. "Sarah's bringing that attorney friend of hers, the one who helped with your agreement. I think you'll like him." Amy smiled at the transparent matchmaking attempt. It was far too soon for anything like that, but the gesture touched her Eleanor, ensuring Amy knew she remained part of the family's future, not just its past. "Looking forward to it," she replied. "I'll bring dessert from that bakery you love." Setting down her phone, Amy took a deep breath of the salt-tinged air. The woman who had driven north to Seaview Inn a week ago, heart shattered and future uncertain, was already transforming into someone new, someone stronger, wiser, more authentic. She wasn't naive enough to believe the path forward would be without challenges. There would be legal proceedings to finalize, a house to sell, explanations to give to friends and colleagues. But for the first time since discovering Kevin's betrayal, Amy felt genuinely optimistic about her future. The inn below her hummed with the gentle activity of evening guests returning from dinner, staff preparing for the next day. This place that had been the setting for her greatest heartbreak was becoming the foundation of her rebirth. Amy Wright no longer defined by her marriage, but by her own resilience, talents, and choices leaned on the balcony rail and smiled into the darkness. Whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms, surrounded by the family she had chosen and the strength she had always possessed, but was only now fully discovering. As the moon traced its silver path across the endless Pacific, Amy raised her glass in a silent toast, not to endings or beginnings, but to the precious, hard-won wisdom that comes from living through both. Some chapters must close before others can open, and sometimes the most beautiful view appears only after the darkest storm has passed. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me what city you're watching from and what story you'd like to hear next. If your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company, and I'll see you in the next story.